Welcome back to Quantum Conversations. My name is Sarah, and I'm so excited to bring you another episode with my co-host, Carrie Bennett. We are really enjoying giving you this show and talking about these topics that seem really complex so that we can help them be a little bit more understandable to the everyday person. I just wanted to remind you to head down into the show notes to make sure you get my free resources and Carrie's free resources. We've both spent a lot of time compiling our favorite list of products, as well as how you can actually implement a lot of these things into your daily life for free using our guides. We also both have amazing courses that you have access to in the show notes as well. And we co-host a course together called Quantum Fertility. We've actually had some quantum fertility babies just born this summer, and we have several quantum fertility pregnancies going on right now where women were told that they were not going to get pregnant, and we have been able to show them the way using these circadian principles and quantum biology, and we're so grateful for this. So make sure you head down to the show notes, check out those resources, check out those courses. And if you are enjoying the show, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, leave us a comment. And if you're listening on the podcast app, please head on over to Apple or Spotify, leave us up to a 5-star review. Since we are such a brand new show, we want to make sure that we're getting this message out to as many people as possible. Again, we want to make these concepts of quantum biology and circadian biology understandable and applicable to the everyday person. We want you to pull up a chair, come hang out, and enjoy this conversation with me and Carrie, and have a fantastic day. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Quantum Conversations. We are so happy to have you here. And today we're going to talk about the sun and nuance around the sun, because I think that gets lost a lot in the conversation.
It's lost in two ends, right?
Yes.
There's people who completely fear the sun and assume every aspect of the sun is harmful. And then there's people who think that you really, in order to get the benefit of the sun, you have to be outside in full body sun exposure all day long as well. Mm-hmm. Right. And there's nuance and there's a range. And I kind of want to, I think, share maybe our clinical and personal observations with this in terms of what might be ways to get the sunlight, but maybe you are a parent and you have kids to tend to, or you work a full-time job, or it's like, so what does the happy medium look like in between? Because I think we have to be clear as well. Sunlight, when it has its full intensity of ultraviolet light, that's an intense photonic input into the body. That's energy rich, which while that means that our body can pull it in and use it as energy, it has also been shown that ultraviolet light can degrade collagen, for example, right?
Exactly.
And so, and a lot of big barrier for people getting into the sun and utilizing it is things like aging, right? They don't want to photo age. And so some people in this community, in our community that we share, are going to be like, oh, that's BS. They just got to get over it. And
exactly. And you can't photo age if you're hydrated and your water system is intact and like that. I've heard that one before. I've seen that argument, and I'm like,
you can. I think you can photo age, but I also don't think you need to fear the sun. And so we need to talk.
Where's the balance? Where's the medium?
Exactly.
Because I think, like you said, I think a lot of people are hurt by both extremes. Just as many people I think are hurt, not maybe just as many, but a good amount of people are hurt by the unlimited sun conversation, Probably more people are hurt by the let's fear the sun completely. Let's be honest about it. But the unlimited sun conversation, hello, I obviously have ancestors that are from like Northern Europe.
What's your haplogroup? Do you know it?
H2.
I'm a J. Yeah. I'm a J.
Yeah. So for people who don't understand what that means, because I was, what's a haplogroup? And you can find this out on, DNA. I think it was 123andme.com that I did I don't know, 15 years ago.
About 10 years ago.
Yeah. It was literally 15 years ago I did this. And it's a little saliva thing you send off. And I don't know if people should really be doing that these days, but whatever.
If I had the choice these days, I probably wouldn't choose to send my DNA off to a lab. But that's just
what's done is done.
What's done is done. So that's how I know my haplogroup, which is basically where our mitochondria originated, right? Exactly. And our mitochondria basically originated because they're passed on via our mother, the maternal lineage. And so mine originated at least as far back as could be tracked in Northern Europe, and yours would be the same, right? So.
Exactly. And Dr. Doug Wallace, if anyone's listening and they're like, I want to learn more about this topic, I always send them to Dr. Doug Wallace. I think that he's a really great person to help you understand this topic. But going back to our conversation on the sun, my haplogroup, I didn't even live in this sort of environment. I live in Georgia, right? And we have UVB year round here. Granted, the index only gets to like a 2 for a couple of months there, but we get really strong UVB here. And I don't think ancestrally that my people had that. And so there is some adaptation, and you can adapt. And I have definitely adapted. I get really tan every summer. But it's not something that you just decide one day, hey, I'm just going to go and lay out in full sun, having no solar callus and, no circadian rhythms and none of that. Like it's a conscious thing you do, and you do it carefully. Right?
Yeah, you absolutely layer it on. And when you start to layer on your sun exposure, your body physically adapts in many ways, right? You become very good at tanning your skin. You become very good at putting what I would call endogenous sun factors in your skin layers, like urocanic acid. And so you become very adept at when you get that pinkening response, that final histamine response to the sun in a beneficial way. That's a beneficial thing. The signal to, okay, pull yourself out of the full body sun exposure. You've had enough sun for the day. So, you can layer it on. What's interesting to talk about in this line of thinking is there is some very fascinating research that shows that people with melanoma with more sun exposure are less likely to die of melanoma. People, the fact that when you degrade collagen used because of the ultraviolet light, that actually might be one of the body's built-in mechanisms to prevent something like melanoma from spreading and moving through the tissue. Wow. So there is some interesting nuance in both ways. But I really have found that my body benefits from what I would call a happy medium perspective, where throughout the early spring months, I start to really build my tolerance to sun, because in Michigan right now, I couldn't tan if I tried, right? And so I would slowly start to build it on. So again, I get really tan as well. And I never used to tan. I always used to be that person who would, I'd get intermittent sun exposure, go to the cottage and then just fry. Right. Yeah. And so now I actually tan very well, including my legs. My
legs could never get the same. It was like pale, pasty. Yeah. Yeah.
And so obviously the melanogenesis, or the melanin producing pathways, are upregulated, and they're really responsive, which is something that one way your body adapts. But, I just don't have the capability to be outside in a bikini or a kaniki for hours and hours and hours on end, right? That will happen occasionally. You got kids, right? And so what do you do? Like, where's the happy medium? Well, that's why we talk about how you apply the sun. You sync the circadian rhythm in the morning, you get that UVA rise mid-morning-ish, right? And then when UVB appears, that's when it would be a great time to get some full body sun exposure. But I don't know about you. I find that my body does perfectly well with a consistent 20-ish, 30 minutes, as many days of the week as I can in that light, as opposed to needing to lay out for hours and hours and hours on end. It doesn't seem to be a necessary aspect in terms of my body's ability to make vitamin D, feel energized, not necessarily because it's parasympathetic, it's calming, but have adequate vitamin D, adequate, what we call free energy or electronic energy sets in the body, just for the body to run all the programs it needs. It seems to be the perfect, consistent application of sunlight for me.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I don't have time to do that with 2 kids. Like, I just don't. So yeah, that's pretty much what I do during the summer. Is the baby's napping, got my daughter doing something, someone watching her, and I'm literally laying out. I have a really nice private area to lay out now, which I didn't before, but I'd lay out with as little things on my body as possible. Usually nothing. But yeah, 20, 30 minutes, that's it. And that's all I need. And like I said, the UV index gets pretty high here. Yesterday, it was 80 degrees and the UV index was a 5. And I had a nice hour to myself. And so I did take advantage of that. And, some people say you can't make vitamin D if the UV index is under like a 5 or 6, but I think you can. You just have to stay out like way, way, way longer. Yeah. So
I think it's 3. I think technically under a 3, it's not possible to stimulate that cholesterol synthesis into vitamin D. But like you said, you can make it, but it probably requires a good hour of sun exposure, just like you had. But the thing is that pairs very well with the temperature and the intensity, right? It was a lower intensity sunlight on your skin, a lower temperature,
right?
That still felt good to be out there. And so you were able to easily tolerate an hour of full body sun exposure without feeling like it was excessive.
Yeah. In the summer I wouldn't do that here. Like I might if I built up to it, but not on the regular. It wouldn't be like a daily thing that I did. And I don't think we need them for someone who's like super fair, like me, naturally, you don't need that much in order to get the vitamin D that you need and get those energetic benefits. And, I did notice that the first year that I kind of dove into all this stuff headfirst and, was wanting to do it all, I did really overexpose my face to sun. And I did notice some photo aging on my face. And I will admit that, and I'm, not super happy about that, but it is what it is. I learned my lesson. But I did notice some aging on my face from overdoing that sun exposure. So now when I lay out, a lot of times I do wear a hat. I will cover my face. I still don't wear sunscreen, but I will do some shade over my face because I am 44 and I am a little bit vain. I will be the first to admit that. And
are we going to get ripped apart for this?
I'm probably going to get shredded for saying this stuff, but I'm just being honest. I am just being honest. I don't want to prematurely age my skin. And I do feel like that when I first started all this stuff, I was in that because it's just my personality is like more is better, has to be like 100, like 50 is not enough, it has to be 100, 110, I'm always pushing. I've learned a lot of lessons in my life, but from that mentality screwing me up. So that's why I always, when I talk about this topic, I do want to tell people, I think that you can photo age your skin. I really do think that you can.
Well, and I think what we need to do is we need to remove the barriers. I got ripped apart back in the day when I posted on my stories this skin serum that I really like from Herbal Face Food, right? Where it's this beautiful plant-based, enzyme-based therapy it really is good for photo aging. And someone basically commented and said, "I've lost all respect for you. You're promoting this beauty product and trying to make money off of it." And so I this is when I still replied to my time to reply to my DMs. And I said, well, I'm just curious if you would want to go into a little bit more detail about your perspective about why this really has ruined everything that I've taught in previously, And I said, what I'm trying to do is remove a barrier to entry. Because right now what people are more afraid of the sun than they are, when they found this quantum health space, they're all about it. They understand the benefits. But if they haven't found this, they're way more afraid of the sun than we are. Right. And so I'm trying to remove every possible barrier. And for women my age, the barrier is wrinkles. The barrier is sunspots, right? Yeah. And so if I can remove that barrier or help support people through it to get adequate sun exposure and allow their body to get full body sun exposure on a regular basis and derive the benefits from that, I'm all about it. So I basically said that to him in a voice message, and he was very apologetic, actually. So I was surprised.
Really? That's surprising. He was like,
I know. He's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I had a bad morning." And, okay. Well,
that's nice.
This reminds me. Okay. So this is such a silly segue here, but there's a football coach. He was a former professional football coach named Herm Edwards. And he used to teach his players, don't push send. You can type it up.
Oh yeah.
You can, you can get it all situated, type it up but hit delete. Don't push send. And so that's the thing. It's like, my friend, don't push send, right?
Yeah. Just
but anyways, that's
Have
the thing.
your
It's
moment. Yeah.
what we're trying to do is I'm trying to remove a barrier. And so, yeah, you know, I would much rather help someone mitigate photo aging, which will happen with long-term regular sun exposure, so that then they don't want to turn to Botox and injecting a chemical into their body, right? It's like, so where can we find the happy medium where we recognize that the body benefits from upregulating melanin deposition, get benefits from making vitamin D through the skin pathway, because it makes so many different metabolites as well. But you get a benefit of improving blood flow from the full body sun exposure, benefit from building exclusion zone water throughout the body, which is a key thing that we've talked about many times. And so I want someone to say, wow, that far outweighs the fact that it might cause a little bit of photo aging. And if I have gotten enough sun exposure on my face, I'll put a hat on and look, here's a couple of products I can use that can support my skin and skin health and red light therapy, right? Throughout this process.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's huge. And like you said, I think that people don't really understand. And I got killed about a year ago when I did this post on Instagram. Actually, I think I took it down because I was having Instagram come after me, threatening to remove my account if I didn't take it down. And I was like, all right, I don't want to lose my whole account. But the studies and the science around the sun and skin cancer have primarily been done with narrowband UV lamps. I haven't found any studies that have been done specifically on humans and the sun where people are getting reasonable, like we talk about, reasonable amounts of sunlight on their skin and not like just one wavelength. And just saying that like really, really upset a lot of people, and the Instagram police, Facebook, whatever. So yeah, a lot of the science and the research that we have around the sun and cancer and all these issues really is based on something that was done in a lab. There's probably blue light also shining, and a narrow band UV lamp. So
it was started with an arc lamp, right? That emits UVB light or UV light. And that's what the best thing I ever did was go back into the early research in UVB, and skin and sunlight, which was at the turn of the 19th century, And so you have this guy, this doctor, Auguste Rollier, with his heliotherapy clinics up in the Swiss Alps, right up in the Alps at really intense UV light, slowly applying this intense UV light to his patients and healing everything, every infectious disease. I might get this video banned. All sorts of autoimmune and inflammatory conditions. And so he was just really just systematically applying it little by little, minute by minute. Each day, the patient would get more and more sunlight exposure on more and more of their body. So very much what we talk about with building this solar tolerance, right? This solar callus. As opposed to at the same time, the research in the lab, which had a petri dish of cells where they shined just ultraviolet light at it. And they said, oh, look, that ultraviolet light is mutating the DNA. Well, sure it is, because it's a very intense wavelength of light that by itself, when it doesn't have all the blend of colors and is shown at this intense in this intense way, of course, it has the ability to mutate the DNA. And that's the camp that won out, right? In terms of public opinion. And now people are very fearful of the light. So I think that we need to recognize there is a happy medium, right? That many a study has shown a correlation between sunlight exposure and a reduction in cancers, sunlight exposure and a reduction in autoimmune conditions, sunlight exposure and an improvement in immune system function. And so we really need to recognize that there is a benefit to sunlight beyond even also what we talk about with circadian signaling and hormone balance and neurotransmitter health and all those other things that we've discussed many times here as well. And but to get it, you don't have to lay out 2-3 hours a day. If you want to, and if that works for you, by all means, go for it. But for me, I find that if I'm consistent with 20 to 30 minutes a day, feels pretty darn good. I build a heck of a tan, and I feel fine when I go to our family's lake house in the summer, and I can then spend hours and hours and hours outside on the beach. I feel great. But just on a regular basis, I'm about 30 minutes a day, and it feels really good.
Yeah, exactly. So no need to go to the extreme. I mean, if you want to, go for it. But yeah, I think that's where the conversation needs to land, is this place that you can still get all the benefits And then some if you're in this moderate place, or just even, you don't have to go extreme. Yeah.
And if you're interested in thinking about vitamin D being made, you have to become familiar with the D-Minder app. It's not 1,000% accurate because it just can't be, right. It's
definitely, I don't use it to track vitamin D levels at all.
I don't use it to track vitamin D levels, but I use it to track about approximately how much vitamin D my skin can be synthesizing during a given
a session. Exactly.
And so it's really helpful to say, wow, UV index of 8, 0 cloud cover, full body exposed. In 20 minutes, I can make a lot of vitamin D via this pathway. And so it's just reinforcing. The other thing about it, this is going to be a slight side note, but I've got a lot of people who say, well, my vitamin D levels never elevate. They never raise. It's like I've been sunning myself all summer long. And when I get my blood tested, it's low. We are testing in the blood. We're testing one metabolite out of a dozen. Yep. The body isn't stupid. If you exposed yourself to the UVB light, it will take that and it will make vitamin D. But it's not just going to put it into the blood and it's not just going to put it in that one storage form. The storage depot for vitamin D is the liver. We've got cellular storage for vitamin D. And so it's really antiquated to say this is what your blood level of storage D is. And so let's extrapolate that about your whole entire body, even though you've actually been exposed to tons of sunlight all summer long. Exactly. I've not seen that to be really clinically convincing to me, where yes, your blood level says that, but this person's physiologically tan and healthy, right?
Exactly.
And has been in the sun and has a strong circadian rhythm. But then they've got this fear of, but my vitamin D number says this. So just to throw that out there.
I think that's good. Yeah. Very important, because I do see that with people as well. And I'm like, well, how do you feel? I think that's an important thing. Like I had just on another topic, I had somebody in my DMs the other day and they were like, what's the best fitness tracker to buy to track your health? And I was like, well, I really don't like those. But if you have to occasionally check in, see like what your HRV is doing, whatever, I like the Aura Ring on airplane mode only. That's like literally the only one I find acceptable. And they were like, well, if you don't have a fitness tracker, then how do you know like how you're actually doing? And I was like, how do you feel? Like, why are we so out of touch with, like, we have to have a lab marker or we have to have a fitness tracker data or whatever to tell us how we're doing? Like, how do you feel,
Right. Or do you remember like when we didn't have an app to tell us what the weather was? So like we stuck our head outside and it was like, oh, it's cloudy and cooler today. Let me put on a jacket.
Exactly. I'll just go outside. Right.
Right. And no, it's very true. We're in a data-driven era. And while data and technology allows you and I to do exactly what we're doing right now, which is a beautiful thing, it also, I think, has disconnected us from our perceptions of what's happening in our bodies. And we're reliant on our blood work because blood work is what gets checked. I've been kicked out of many a doctor's office, but blood work is what gets run from your doctor. If you're looking to see, let's see what your blood work says. And then we'll say we'll tell you if you're healthy or not. Right. As opposed to, how are you feeling? Right. How do you sleep? What's your digestion like? How do you wake up in the morning? Right. What's your mood? Do you have periods where you feel joy throughout the day? Like, do you move regularly, which is something I can easily assess on days like this. I have to get my walk in before I sit in front of the computer, because then I'm 4 hours back to back, right. With Q&As and stuff like that. And so I know I don't move as much in this 4 hour chunk of time. So I'll move beforehand. I'll move afterwards. It's just like and I don't need a data tracker to tell me that. Yes, no. It's motivational for people to see that they're almost at 10,000 steps. Fine. That's great. But in the grand scheme of things, I would much rather see people start to tune back into their bodies and start to check in with themselves about how they're feeling, as opposed to check in with an app to tell them how they're feeling or how their sleep was.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what, so don't get hung up on the numbers. And I've had people use the D-Minder app and, then compare, because it'll tell you your estimated blood level. And I always forget to use my D-Minder. I just know now when it's time for me to go inside, but I was just curious yesterday because the UV index was only a 5 and I was like, let me just see what it says I'm making. I'm curious in like an hour out here. Right. And, when I finished the session, it was like your D levels are an 8. Because that's how often, because I never use that app, but it'll tell you based on how long you're out there, what your estimated blood levels are. And that's not typically going to be accurate. I have not seen that be accurate for anybody.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's good to know what the UV index is and just like how much D that you're quote unquote making and, just figure out those types of things, but I don't use it to say, this is how much D I've made and these are my levels. And yeah, I don't really get hung up on that stuff at all.
I don't either. I feel like it's a good transition though for people who say, well, my doctor says I need to take 4,000 IU of a D3 supplement every day.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And it's like, well, how about you tell your doctor you're going to make 4,000 IU of it with
right.
Right.
Exactly.
Which doesn't take long. If in the middle of summer, it doesn't take long to do that. And so if you can start to make that swap even, but yeah, we're like measuring vitamin D in the blood in that one number is like measuring TSH for your thyroid and drawing conclusions based on that. And there's way more metabolites to measure with vitamin D than there are for the thyroid cascade. So you know how inaccurate just measuring TSH can be. So think about how inaccurate just measuring one form of D in the blood could be.
Exactly. 100%. Yeah. So don't get hung up on it and enjoy the sun, right? There's that study. It's like less sun exposure increases all cause mortality. Yeah. Yeah. That's the one. And I think that that's kind of where we need to understand about this conversation, that if you go in that camp of constantly fearing the sun, there will be health consequences. Right. And, if we can do anything to help make this more approachable for people, which is really what we're trying to do with this podcast, is just make these topics more approachable and understandable and like down to earth, then hopefully we've cleared up some of that today.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're not alone if you want to cover up your face from the sun because of photo aging. We won't judge you because we do the same thing.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, not going to lie. That's kind of what we talked about last week, is the influencers who, say one thing and do another thing. You don't really know what people are doing. So I'm transparent with people. Yeah. I wear a hat. I wear a visor because my husband makes fun of my visor.
That's smart though. Tell him why.
Because you want to get that near infrared on the top of your head, right? Like it's important to get that on the top of your head. So
that's next level, Sarah. I love it. Like you got your tennis visor on.
Yeah. He's like, he called me like Potty Pepper Pot or something like that. The tennis. He's like, it's Potty Pepper Pot, the tennis pro.
That's funny.
Go away. Leave me alone.
Yeah. I have not gone there yet. Although I joked about taking my sun hat and just like cutting a hole.
Yeah.
Although I feel like my family, I mean, they probably wouldn't be surprised, but no, I probably won't go there, but I thought about it.
I've already like got the crazy card. I mean, my husband will be like, comes out to me like laying naked outside. He's like, why are you naked? Like,
no one can see me. Why not?
Right, like no one can see me but you. Like, do you really mind? But
what are you saying?
Are you complaining?
Yeah. So enjoy your sun exposure. And here's the other thing too. In the winter, as it's getting colder and darker, remember, we can make melatonin. Yes. And we've talked about this before. Yes. So you also don't have to fear the winter as a time of misery or, like this thing like, oh no, the light is gone. Yes, a lot of the light is gone, but the body has a built-in switch with melatonin to really bridge the gap and do a lot of healing in that capacity.
Exactly. I found a study this morning because I actually did a post on that. Let me see if I can pull it up. People can just kind of type it in Google or the search engine that they use. But I don't know if you've seen this. It's called, is melatonin the next vitamin D? Have you seen that
That's the one that I just talked about last week in my post. Yeah, that's the one I pulled up. Yeah. Yeah, it was a great article. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's really what you and I have talked about in our winter episode. We've talked about this several times, but summertime, get out there in the sun. Wintertime, dark, cold.
And infrared, right?
Yes.
That's campfire. It's this idea that the body needs the infrared.
Yep. Yep. Campfire candles.
Hot bath if you want.
Oh,
right?
love the hot bath. Yep.
Yeah,
Sauna. Exactly. All the things. Yep. Exactly.
cool.
Awesome. All right.